And you shared in an earlier conversation an awe-inspiring story about a brand called Lush Cosmetics.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hoping you could share it with our listeners. And this is something I'm really curious about, and I would love to hear your thoughts in how a company follows through on the ground with this kind of really seismic decision that they made. Listeners, you'll understand in a second.
Yeah.
But how does that look like operationally when you've made that bold and brave a decision?
Right. Lush Cosmetics, I think people know, they make those bath bombs, and they have they have a bunch of different socially conscious areas that they support.
Yep.
And so when Frances Haugen, then called the Facebook whistleblower, we would maybe call her now the Meta whistleblower, talked about how young teenage girls were being affected by spending time on Instagram. And they found that they were consuming more and more eating disorder content, and they were feeling worse and worse and worse about themselves. And not only were they feeling worse about themselves, the more that they watched the content, the more they were compelled to continue to watch it.
Yeah.
And what Facebook knew was that not only was this bad, it was worse than any other social platform. And so Lush, whose consumer base is those teenage girls who are walking around the mall, right? They went to their Instagram site and they said, be somewhere else. It was just a gray background that looked like a tiles in a bathroom, and it said, be somewhere else. Now, they could have walked away and said, okay, we did this for however long, and now we're going to go back, right? No, you go back 3 years later, and on their page it says, what the zuck, right? And then it has all kinds of information still about how being on that social media space is bad for them. What that says to the consumer, and this goes back to what we were talking about earlier, is don't commit yourself to something unless you can be in it. You can really, really be in it. And this is what Lush did. They said, this is who our consumer is. We care about how better to say that you care about your consumer than say we're not going to support this platform. Now, did it hurt them? No, it didn't. It said to them, we care about you. Yeah. All the more reason for people to then commit back to them, to be, good consumers of their product. And when years ago, I wrote a book called Compassion Inc., and it's about cost marketing, corporate social responsibilities, all this stuff that we're talking about in terms of this. And at that time, this was like 2012. At that time, social media existed, but
nothing like we have today.
The way we have today.
Nothing.
And so at that point, if a brand made a mistake, consumers were willing to forgive them. If you did a mea culpa, we made a mistake, we screwed up, we're really sorry, people would come back to you anyway. That's not how it happens anymore. And this would go back to what we're talking about, too, in terms of e.l.f. One of the things that people still like to think about is that any PR is good PR. And that just doesn't hold true anymore, right?
Yeah, absolutely not.
And so, and it goes back to basic communication, right? The source, the receiver, the feedback, right? And it used to be the feedback was you had to write a letter, you had to find out what the CEO's name was, right? You had to write it and go to the post office and get a stamp and all that. No, it takes you 10 seconds to post something online, and then all your friends see it, and then the whole thing takes off. You need to be as grounded, and I think that's the best word to think about.
Yeah.
You need to be as grounded as Lush is in their commitment to their consumer base. And think about, that's a great lesson for any brand, I think. Who is it you are serving?
Yes.
Who are you serving? You are serving the people who buy your product. And what are their concerns? And I think this is going to get into a conversation that we're going to have about brands and how to do branding right. So I'm going to stop there. So I'll let you ask the question.
But I love where you're going with this. And as I was listening, it kind of occurred to me that Lush took themselves out of the doom scroll. So now maybe there's an extra step for consumers and customers to go find where Lush lives out in the digital world. Now, yes, that can be a very big leap.
Right.
But on the other hand, subconsciously, that is a deepening of engagement. If I'm leaving here and looking for you and finding you, something inside of me is more invested in engaging with you now
Right.
that I've done something
Right.
to go connect with
Right.
you.